The rest of the house had adjusted to her absence. Her clothes had been donated. Her favorite teacups packed away. The piano downstairs closed and polished into silence. But this room remained untouched. The air felt preserved, like time itself had paused out of respect. Daniel was a man of rigid structure. His mornings began at Subah ke 5 baje with a 5-mile run. Black coffee, financial briefings, strategy calls. He had built Whitmore Technologies from a modest startup into a global powerhouse through relentless discipline. Habit was his weapon. Predictability was his strength. Emotion, on the other hand, was inefficient. At least, that's what he had trained himself to believe. When Emma was diagnosed, he had responded the only way he knew how, by organizing. Researching doctors, scheduling treatments, creating spreadsheets, fighting the disease like a hostile takeover. But cancer did not negotiate. And when she passed, Daniel did what he always did in crisis, he worked harder. Board meetings doubled, travel increased, public speeches sharpened. His grief was buried under quarterly projections. Yet on this particular night, a power outage across part of the city forced him home early. The silence pressed in heavier than usual. No television hum, no emails pinging, no assistants calling, just stillness and memory. Without consciously deciding to, Daniel's feet carried him upstairs. He pushed open the study door slowly. The faint scent of lavender drifted through the air, Emma's favorite candle. Her reading chair sat angled toward the window, a wool blanket folded neatly across its arm. A small brass lamp cast a golden circle of light over the side table. On it rested a book. To Kill a Mockingbird. He exhaled sharply. She had been halfway through it when her strength began to fail. Daniel stepped closer, running his fingers along the bookshelf. Titles on empathy, faith, poetry, biographies of people who changed the world not with wealth, but with compassion. Books he had never had time to read. He picked up the novel from the table, intending only to move it. But as he lifted it, something slipped free. A cream-colored envelope fluttered to the hardwood floor. Daniel froze. His name was written across it in elegant cursive. Daniel. The world narrowed. His hands, steady in billion-dollar negotiations, trembled as he bent down to retrieve it. He recognized the pen she used. The slight curve of her letters. The deliberate spacing. This was not accidental. She had hidden it there. Between pages of a story about justice and moral courage. His throat tightened. For a long moment, he considered not opening it. If he didn't read it, he could pretend it wasn't there. Control, containment, habit. But love has a way of demanding courage. Daniel slid a finger beneath the seal and unfolded the letter. Her handwriting filled the page. My love, if you're holding this, it means I didn't get the time I hoped for. I know what you're doing right now, working longer hours, pretending productivity is strength. But Daniel, you are not meant to survive life. You are meant to feel it. There's something I never told you, not because I didn't trust you, but because I needed it to be something I chose quietly. Once a month, I visited a woman named Maria Alvarez in South Boston. We met at the hospital. She was sitting alone with her son Leo in the pediatric wing. He has severe asthma. She works 2 jobs. She has no family here. I didn't save her. I simply listened. Promise me you'll go see her. Not to solve, not to donate, just to listen. Love is a habit too. And you've forgotten how to practice it. Emma. Daniel lowered the letter slowly. The words blood as tears welled in his eyes, tears he had refused to shed at the funeral. South Boston. His wife had been visiting a struggling single mother, alone. He felt a strange mix of emotions, confusion, guilt, admiration. How much of Emma's quiet kindness had he overlooked while chasing expansion deals and international acquisitions? He walked to the window, letter still in hand. Snow began to fall over the city skyline. Somewhere in the distance, church bells chimed the late hour. Maria Alvarez, Leo. Daniel glanced back at the book. Emma had hidden the letter inside a novel about empathy, about seeing humanity beyond status and power. He sank into her reading chair. For the first time since her death, he allowed himself to cry. Not controlled tears, not dignified ones, but raw, shaking sobs that echoed in the silent room. His entire identity had been built on forward motion, efficiency, achievement. But Emma's final request required something else entirely. Presence. The next morning, Daniel woke at Subah ke 5 baje as usual. He put on his running shoes. He brewed his coffee. He reviewed the market reports. Everything felt the same, but it wasn't. At Subah ke 7:45 baje, his assistant called to confirm the Subah ke 8 baje investor briefing. Daniel looked at the letter on his kitchen counter. I'm cancelling, he said calmly. There was stunned silence on the other end. Sir, reschedule it. He hung up before questions could follow. This was not strategic. It was not efficient. It did not maximize shareholder value. It was uncomfortable. And that's how he knew it mattered. Daniel dressed in a simple overcoat instead of his usual tailored suit. He drove himself, something he hadn't done in years. As he left the pristine streets of Back Bay, the city changed. Buildings grew older. Paint peeled. Sidewalks cracked beneath winter frost. He felt out of place. His instinct whispered, "You don't belong here." But Emma's words echoed louder. Love was a habit too. He found the address, a modest brick apartment building near the docks. Children's bicycles lay tipped against a fence. Laundry hung in a small shade courtyard. Daniel sat in the car for a full minute, gripping the steering wheel. He could still turn back. Send money anonymously. Have someone else handle it. That was his default pattern, delegate discomfort. Instead, he stepped out into the cold. Each stair creaked beneath his polished shoes as he climbed to the second floor. He stood before a faded blue door. For the first time in years, Daniel Whitmore felt uncertain. He knocked. Footsteps approached slowly from inside. The door opened. A woman with tired eyes and guarded strength looked at him. "Yes. Are you Maria Alvarez?" he asked quietly. She nodded cautiously. "My name is Daniel Whitmore." No recognition. "My wife," he added gently. "Emma Whitmore. She asked me to find you." The guarded look dissolved. Her hand flew to her mouth. "Mrs. Whitmore," she whispered. She hasn't come in months." Daniel swallowed. "She passed away." Silence stretched between them, heavy and sacred. From inside, a child's small cough echoed. "Mama," a voice called. Maria stepped aside. "Please," she said softly. "Come in." And as Daniel crossed the threshold of that small apartment, he stepped into something far greater than obligation. He stepped into the beginning of a new habit, one that would demand vulnerability instead of control. One that would change everything, but Daniel wasn't thinking about numbers. He was thinking about a drafty apartment in South Boston. He was thinking about how Maria had apologized for the chipmug she served him tea in. "I'm sorry," she had said quietly. "It's all I have that's not correct." And Daniel, a man who owned 6 imported espresso machines, had felt something break inside him. For the first time in years, success felt incomplete. That evening, instead of staying late at the office, he drove back. This time, he brought groceries, but no logoed bags, no assistants, no publicity. Just 2 paper sacks from a local market. When Maria opened the door, surprise flickered across her face. "You came back," she said. Daniel gave a small nod. "I said I would." Inside, Leo sat wrapped in a blanket, drawn with dull crayons on scrap paper. "What are you making?" Daniel asked, kneeling again, a posture that was slowly becoming natural. "A rocket ship," Leo replied shyly. "So I can fly where the air doesn't hurt." Daniel swallowed hard. Maria turned away quickly, pretending to straighten dishes. Over the next weeks, a rhythm formed. Every Thursday evening, Daniel showed up. Sometimes he helped Leo with homework. Sometimes he just listened while Maria talked about juggling diner shifts and hospital bills. Sometimes they sat in silence, and even that felt meaningful. Listening was uncomfortable at first. Daniel was used to solving. When Maria mentioned the broken heater, his instinct was immediate: replace the system. When she spoke about overdue rent, he wanted to eliminate the problem entirely. But Emma's letter guided him. Not to solve, not to donate, just to listen. And so he practiced restraint, a new kind of discipline. At the office, subtle changes began to ripple. When a junior analyst nervously stumbled during a presentation, Daniel didn't interrupt. He waited. He asked, "What support do you need?" The room fell silent. This was not the Daniel they knew. He began implementing flexible scheduling for employees with families. He created a hardship fund, anonymous, accessible, dignified. When asked about the sudden shift in leadership style, he simply replied, "We build better when we care better." One icy night, Daniel arrived to find Leo struggling to breathe more than usual. The small apartment felt colder than ever. "The heater keeps shutting off," Maria admitted softly. "The landlord says he'll fix it, but..." She didn't finish. Daniel looked around. The peeling windows, the thin walls, the damp creeping into corners. He understood something then. Listening did not mean ignoring injustice. It meant understanding it first. The next morning, Daniel called a trusted architect, not under his company name, but privately. He funded repairs to the entire building through a community revitalization program. insulation, heating systems, safer wiring, not just for Maria, for every family in that building. When workers arrived 2 weeks later, residents were stunned. Maria confronted him gently that evening. You did this. Daniel shook his head slightly. I helped. Quietly. Tears filled her eyes. She would have liked that, Maria whispered. He nodded. Yes, she would. Spring came slowly to Boston. Snow melted into narrow streams along sidewalks. Leo's asthma improved with the warmer air, and with the building's new ventilation. One Saturday, Daniel invited Maria and Leo somewhere special. They drove toward the harbor, where a small garden overlooked the water. Nothing extravagant, just trees, benches, and blooming white lilies, Emma's favorite. At the center stood a modest plaque. Love is a habit. Practice daily. Maria read the words aloud, her voice trembling. Leo ran across the grass, laughter carried by the ocean breeze. Daniel stood still, watching the horizon. For months after Emma's death, he had believed grief was something to suppress. Something to outwork. But here, standing between past and present, he understood. Grief could also be transformed. Into action, into presence, into love practiced deliberately. Maria stepped beside him. She didn't just help me, she said softly. She made me feel seen. Daniel's eyes remained on the water. I spent years building a company, he replied. But she was building something far greater. He paused. I'm just learning how to continue it. That summer, Daniel established a foundation in Emma's name, not focused on publicity, but on mentorship and practical support for single parents balancing medical challenges. He insisted on one condition. Every executive who volunteered had to spend time listening before offering solutions. Some resisted at first, but gradually, stories replaced statistics. Human faces replaced abstract cases. And Daniel noticed something remarkable. The company's performance didn't decline. It improved. Empathy strengthened loyalty. Purpose fueled innovation. Teams worked not just for profit, but for meaning. One evening, as the sun dipped low over the harbor, Daniel found Leo sitting beside him on a bench in the memorial garden. Mr. Daniel, Leo asked. Yes. Are you rich? Daniel chuckled softly. I suppose some people think so. Leo tilted his head thoughtfully. My mama says you're rich because you keep coming back. Daniel felt his throat tighten. Of all the metrics he had ever measured, none had felt as accurate as that. Rich because you keep coming back. That night, Daniel returned home, not to emptiness, but to quiet fulfillment. Emma's letter now rested in his wallet, edges worn from being unfolded so many times. Whenever the old habits whispered, work longer, feel less, avoid discomfort, he touched the paper. And he chose differently, because success may be built by discipline. But a life worth living is built by the habit of love.